What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Water Cooler Talk. My name is Caleb Turner, and I'm a sports writer at KSL.com. It is Sunday, August 24th. We are coming at you after a bit of a break we took last week off. I was a little busy with a couple other stories I had going on. We've got high school football starting up, which kept me busy last weekend, and just kind of took it as a breather before we kind of jump right into the thick of the sports calendar, as we have Labor Day coming up, the end of summer, and the beginning of the fall sports season, which means, of course, not only football, both high school and college, but all the rest that comes with fall, whether you be into baseball or basketball coming up in a couple months as well. Soccer as well, of course, keeps going into the fall. So it all starts to come together over the next couple of months, and it's gonna be busy. So it took last week as a breather, and because of that, we've got maybe a little bit of extra news coming at you for this upcoming week for your Monday, heading into what is essentially the last week of summer, as we are 1 week out from Labor Day and about 5 or 6 days away from college football being played here in the state of Utah. So exciting stuff coming up. And on that note, I think we'll start out with possibly one of the biggest headlines out of last week, which was that BYU officially named their starting quarterback. Obviously, quarterbacks are a big deal on any football team, but especially at BYU with the history they have at the quarterback position, it's a big deal, and especially when it's a freshman, a true freshman, meaning he has not redshirted a year. He's right out of high school, and that is Bear Bachmeier from California, Southern California. He had originally committed to Stanford with his brother Tiger, but they decided to switch late spring, I believe, to BYU. And Bear came into the fall training camp in Provo ready to prove himself. And from everything that we've heard, really impressed coaches, not only with his physical abilities on the field, but one of the biggest things I've heard from their practices via both social media clips and from Sean Walker's coverage on KSL.com is that he knows the whole playbook. He's a smart kid. He took the time to study everything that coaches were throwing at him, learn all the plays. And the big quote kind of coming out of last week was that Aaron Roderick, the offensive coordinator at BYU, said that that he can run any play that Zach Wilson, Jaron Hall, or Jake Retzlaff ran with BYU. Those are kind of being the last three starting quarterbacks with BYU. Obviously, some success there. Zach Wilson going to the NFL. Jaron Hall also kind of having his cup of coffee with the NFL. And Jake Retzlaff before his transfer, leading BYU to one of their better seasons in recent memory last year in the Big 12. So that intellectual aspect obviously is huge, especially for such a young player. Like I mentioned, 18 years old, coming right out of high school. He will be the first true freshman at BYU to start the season opener, which more on that later, but that season opener is coming up very quickly. It is this upcoming weekend on Saturday against Portland State. So big stuff coming up there in Provo. And just a little more clarity there for BYU fans. I know they are some of the most dedicated, loyal, and engaged fans that we have here in Utah sports. So they were all over that news when it came out that they had a starting quarterback officially named Bear Bachmeier. And he's not the most experienced guy on the team, but luckily they do have quite a bit of experience in other parts of the team, whether that be running back with L.J. Martin, a couple of wide receivers, obviously, Chase Roberts, but also on the defense, which may be where they can hang their hat this season, thanks to defensive coordinator Jay Hill. He really kind of upped BYU's game on that side of the ball, and it looks like they will be a force once again on that side. So look for them to kind of maybe carry the weight and keep other teams to limited points. And then if Bear can kind of get the game under his paws, I'm sure, man, we're gonna have so many puns with his name. It's gonna be great. But once he has it within the grasp of his paws, seems like the playbook he already has, but the game experience, being able to get in there on the road, different opponents, Big 12, which the more I come to learn about the Big 12 in its current state, especially, like, I think it's just the most competitive football conference in the country. I think the stat I saw was the Big 12 has had 5 different champions over the last 5 years, which certainly does not happen very often in a world where college football is kind of run by the quote unquote blue bloods, the one percenters, if you want to put it that way. But the top teams, you think about Texas, Alabama, Florida, Ohio State, those types of teams. There's been a lot more parity in the Big 12, and you can point to some of those teams like Texas, like Oklahoma leaving the Big 12, but there's still some pretty impressive programs in this conference. Utah, of course, being one of them. They start their season as well this upcoming weekend on Saturday on the road at UCLA. Will be kind of a fun first test for this new Utah offense, new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, like we've talked about earlier on the show. And but you've also got Ohio State. We saw them go to battle against Kansas State yesterday in the opening Big 12 game, which was just a fascinating event that took place. It was in Dublin. It was technically week 0, which is like before the official college football season has started, but it counted towards Big 12 standings. And it was raining. It was like crazy field conditions, but it was still an entertaining game between Iowa State and Kansas State. Farmageddon is what they refer to that matchup as. So shout out to them. And there's plenty of other teams as well. You look at the Arizona schools. You look at the Texas schools that are still in here, like TCU, like Texas Tech. So still plenty of exciting competitive teams in the Big 12. And the interesting thing, with the expanded college football playoff, is that whoever wins the Big 12 gets to see how they match up against the other conferences as well. So the SEC, ACC, like those big teams like Texas, who comes into the season as number 1 with their starting quarterback, Arch Manning, of course, nephew of Peyton and Eli Manning, projected to be one of the top, if not the number 1 pick in next year's NFL draft. He comes in with Texas favorites, essentially to win it all this season in college football. So we'll see how that goes for them. But they'll have to go through what is turned into a pretty rigorous process with the 12-team playoff in the college football playoff. It's not just win a semifinal and you're into the championship game. It's a little more involved, and they'll have to go through competitive, gritty type teams like the Big 12 has. So a little preview there for what we'll kind of go into some of the upcoming games and break those down a little bit more as we head into our preview. But as we continue to recap a couple of headlines from the week that was, we'll stay in the zone of kind of personnel player announcements. There were a couple big ones that came out, I believe it was Thursday, between both the teams that I cover, actually, so hockey and soccer. The Utah Mammoth, first off, got a little bit of a boost at the goalie position. The starting goalie at the beginning of last season, Connor Ingram, he carried over from the Coyotes. He was a great goalie for them, and then kind of got the nod when they first came to Utah. And I'm sure if you went to any of those first few games at the Delta Center, you would recognize his name. Connor Ingram, he was away from the team for a period starting in March of this year and throughout the summer in the NHL Player Assistance Program. He lost his mother last year and said he was just not 100% and wanted to put his health first. So he went into that assistance program in March, and it was just announced on Thursday that he was cleared to return from that assistance program and will be available for the Mammoth for this upcoming season. And that comes at an interesting time as we are kind of on the cusp of hockey starting up there, training camp early to mid-September. We haven't gotten official dates yet for exactly when the Mammoth training camp will begin, but we know when their preseason starts, which is September 21st. So I would imagine they would want to get probably a couple weeks of practices in before that first preseason game. So look for that to be starting up, September 7th, let's say, somewhere around there. If we give ourselves 2 weeks before that 21st, will be when, we're starting to congregate those players, and Connor Ingram will be one of them. When he went to the assistance program back in March, the starting job went to Karel. I am going to butcher his name. They call him Veggie. We'll go with Veggie for now. The Czech goalie for the Utah Mammoth. He became the starter and ended up getting a contract extension with Utah. And so he's kind of seen as the go-to guy right now for the Mammoth. Because of the uncertainty with Ingram being away from the team, they did sign a backup in the meantime from the Florida Panthers, another Czech goalie, actually. Vanacek, I believe is his last name. So they got three pretty solid goalies that can compete and kind of, keep each other honest. The iron sharpens iron, right? So if they can kind of help each other and kind of so that the starter doesn't become complacent. That's the last thing you want, is for someone to say, "Hey, I got the job. I don't have to worry about it. No matter how poorly we do, I got the job." So there's two guys behind him who can push. Last year with Ingram gone, it was mostly a guy from the Tucson Roadrunners, the lower division kind of minor league team of the Mammoth that would come up, Jackson Stauber. And he had a couple nice outings, but didn't really push Veggie as far as long-term starting minutes. So it'll be interesting to see how that battle kind of goes in training camp. Like I mentioned, still a couple weeks out for the Mammoth, but something to keep your eye on. And the other player announcement was also on Thursday for Real Salt Lake, as they announced that they traded for U.S. men's national team defender DeAndre Yedlin from Cincinnati. And you've probably heard DeAndre Yedlin's name. He's one, I would say, probably one of, over the last 10 years or so, if you've watched a World Cup with the U.S. in it, one of the more popular names. Plays the right back position, which is a position specifically that RSL has struggled with in recent years, ever since they traded away Aaron Herrera at the end of 2022. It's been a bit of a revolving door at that position as they've kind of moved guys in and out. Andrew Brody, you might recognize that name. He played for a while at that position, but then he left as well. So they were down to Bodie Hidalgo, who also just right after DeAndre Yedlin was signed, he left to Montreal. And Noel Kaliskan, I've heard his name pronounced a couple different ways. He's German. But he was moved from the midfield to right back. And then with Yedlin being signed and seen as the starter at right back, Kaliskan was able to move back into the midfield for last night's game, which was not a great game. It was a 3-1 loss for RSL to Minnesota. But I'd say some of the good news is that one of their new strikers, Victor Olatunji, scored his first goal. And DeAndre Yedlin, the player that RSL just got from Cincinnati, played the entire match. He's 32 years old, not old, but also not young, I would say. He's been around the block. This is his fourth MLS team. He's also played in Europe for a couple different teams. Started in Seattle. He's from Seattle, and he said he wanted to get a little closer to home. So, yeah, I'd say Salt Lake is quite a bit closer to Seattle than Cincinnati. Just an hour or two flight from here, and so that played into a big part of the reason that he wanted to come to Utah. Another fun fact that I think is kind of maybe a little underplayed. I asked him about it in the press conference when he arrived. DeAndre started in Seattle, which is also where RSL's essentially general manager, for lack of a better term, sporting director Kurt Schmid also started his career because his dad, Siggy Schmid, was the head coach at Seattle. Was the first MLS coach for DeAndre Yedlin, and Kurt was involved with the academy that DeAndre came up through. So there's that connection there, which I think is probably a little underrated, that was able to kind of maybe help that negotiation or transition when DeAndre was deciding whether he wanted to stay in Cincinnati or come to Salt Lake. So like I mentioned, he's played in a couple World Cups. He's played 80-something games for the U.S. men's national team. Yet to be seen if he'll be a huge part of that team going forward. I don't think he's played in a couple of years, maybe even since the last World Cup in 2022 for the men's national team. But there's been plenty of changes with that team over the last couple of months. Like we saw, Diego Luna's been able to break into that team, and the World Cup is going to be here in the States next year, with, I believe, games being played in Seattle even. So who knows? Maybe DeAndre will be able to get back on that roster. He'll only be 33 still, so not super old, especially when you've got a guy like Tim Ream, who's the starting center back for the U.S. men's national team. I believe he's getting up there, 36, 37. So certainly not the end of the road for DeAndre Yedlin. And he mentioned that alongside with being closer to Seattle, another big reason for to be attracted to RSL was that they had kind of a long-term vision for him. I think maybe some other teams saw him, you get to 32, maybe a year past your prime, we'll go year by year and see kind of how you go little by little. But he said RSL believes in him enough to sign him to a longer-term contract. We don't know exactly how long that contract is. I would guess 2 to 3 years. 4 would be a little surprising, but get to that 34, 35 year range and then see how things go. But nonetheless, it seems like he's here for the long haul, and he should be the starting option at right back for the foreseeable future for RSL as they look to make a playoff push, which, speaking of which, it's not looking super great. I believe as of last night, RSL had about a 30% chance of making the playoffs. Currently in 10th place, 1 spot out of the playoffs in the Western Conference, 4 points behind both San Jose and Austin for that final spot, or I guess the final 2 spots technically. They do play Austin and Colorado, who's in 7th place over in the last couple months of the season, along with LAFC and Seattle, who are in 4th and 5th place. So they play some good teams, which, part of that you can see as positive because, hey, if you can gain ground on those who are right above you, but also it won't be easy. And RSL has a 3-week break now because that Seattle game had to get adjusted. Seattle playing in the Leagues Cup tournament had to have the match against RSL moved to October. So a bit of a break now. And then in mid-September, RSL plays LAFC twice in 1 week, once in Salt Lake, once in LA, against Heung-min Son, who is Son Heung-min, I guess I should say, South Korean player who played for Tottenham Hotspur, which is my favorite English, also just European in general, soccer team, and that should be an exciting time. He'll be here in Sandy at America First Field. I believe it's like September 12th, somewhere around there. It could be, should be a sellout similar to the big stars that have come here in the past, like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Gareth Bale, also a former Tottenham Hotspur player. So some exciting things to look forward to. And if RSL can steal one from LAFC, who is currently in 5th place, could go a long way in helping their playoff chances. And now we will move into our preview of the first week of college football. So, like I mentioned, it is officially week 1. Week 0 has come and gone, as weird as it is. And we're officially into the season. All 3 FBS top division college football teams in the state of Utah playing on Saturday, August 30th, starting with Utah State. They'll be playing in Logan against UT El Paso. And that game will kick off at 5:30 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. So interesting time for the Aggies. New head coach, Bronco Mendenhall. We'll see how things change up in Logan as they begin what they're hoping will be a turnaround season after a really tough losing season last year in 2024. So they'll get things kicked off, and then we move to our Big 12 rivals, Utah and BYU, who also play on Saturday night. We'll begin with BYU versus Portland State at 6 p.m. at LaVell Edwards Stadium in Provo. Portland State, not an FBS school, an FCS team, so the lower division, coming into BYU after losing 42-0 to Tarleton State, I believe, another FCS squad. So not the greatest start for Portland State. BYU currently a 43.5 point favorite. So if they lost, they're essentially saying that they're going to repeat the same result as last week. They lost 42-0 last week. We'll see if BYU can beat them 43-0, 44-0. Although the over/under is at 60.5, so they're betting that Portland State, if my math is correct, at least gets a couple points there on the board. So we'll see if that happens. They were shut out last week. We'll see if I'd be surprised. I mean, the BYU defense, like I mentioned, is quite solid. Their quarterback threw 2 interceptions last week. Not ideal to start the season, and should be a pretty easy kind of launching pad for BYU as they debut this new quarterback, like I mentioned, freshman quarterback. Not as many changes as maybe Utah State, but they can kind of ease into the season a little bit to start the year. And then we move on to what will probably be the most competitive game of the Utah football slate to start the season, and that is Utah at UCLA. It's a late one. It's if you want to call it Pac-12 after dark, I would not blame you, because these are two former Pac-12 teams playing at 9 p.m. Mountain Time at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. Utah currently favored by 6 points against UCLA. So take that as you will. It's not the 43 points like BYU, but UCLA is no Portland State. They are not. They are a full-on FBS Division I bona fide team, and it's a road game for Utah. So we've heard, I've seen and heard UCLA maybe doesn't get the best turnout at the Rose Bowl. I had one guy at the RSL game last night predicting that it would be somewhere around 70 to 80% Utah fans out there in California. We shall see, but that game will be on Fox nonetheless. Like I mentioned, 9 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff. So that's your opening slate for college football 2025 in the state of Utah. It's here. It's back. The next time I hop on this microphone next Sunday, we will have real results from football games that have been played. And you'll all get to argue about what mattered more, BYU's win over Portland State or Utah's win over UCLA, or maybe it ends up being a loss. But, these early competitions, like I mentioned, you're crossing divisions, you're crossing conferences a little bit. UCLA used to be a conference buddy with Utah in the Big 12, but not anymore. Utah's Big 12, and UCLA is not big. I think Big 10, I believe. So differences there, but going back into a semi-familiar stomping ground for Utah should be a fun one. Let me know if you're staying up for that one. Man, if I'm trying to do this math here, college football games usually go in like 3 hours, so if not a little more. So that 9 p.m. kickoff, you're going past midnight into Sunday here in Utah. So let me know if you'll be staying up for that one. Maybe it'll be a blowout and you can go to bed early. But if not, we will be talking to you next week with those scores, with some new news. Stole that one from the Kelsey brothers. Sorry, I will not do that again. We'll catch you guys next week.